All right. So we should be live now. If you guys can let me know if the sound is good, we will we'll get started. Just give me 1 second to get organized. And I'm just going to pull up the stream to make sure it's going. All right, looks like it is active. All right, so welcome to the new and improved Pokenomics channel. So I guess a few updates. We hired and are working with an editor who's going to be helping us design our new I think sleek logo. You can let us know how you feel about the logo, and it's going to be helping us with things like thumbnails. We are going to be doing more editing. I know I've gotten a lot of feedback, like that these long interviews that we do are great, and that people really do love them, and there's a lot of great material in there. But it can be hard to understandably watch a huge, such a long video, and so maybe over time figuring out how to make that more digestible for people. Maybe also making it into a podcast. There are some other things we're talking about doing. I just want to thank again all the Patreon members who are supporting the channel with that money. I have bought a good microphone, which we will be hooking up. Hopefully, it's not yet hooked up because I need another connector. I'm gonna have to buy for it to connect it to the computer, but we'll get that going. And yeah. So, and thank you all so much, just the people who tune in on these lives every week and watch the videos. I'm really enjoying the channel kind of more and more as I figure out what I do enjoy, what type of content I want to make, what people want to see from me, that sort of thing. So it'll be a discovery over time, but I'm excited to be able to hopefully grow the channel and provide better quality content with a working camera, with a better microphone, that sort of stuff. It's never gonna lose its hopefully the feel of the channel that you guys like, which is me sometimes scripted, but often sort of unscripted, sharing my genuine feelings that day about the hobby. So I'm gonna always keep that, but I think that the better camera quality, the better thumbnails, all that sort of thing, just improves the overall experience. So, yeah. So thanks for hanging out and tuning in, and we're gonna start with some of the Patreon questions as we usually do every week. This week we have 3 questions. So first question is, my question for today's stream is rather related to sports cards, but also can be applied to Pokemon. Do you think authenticated signed cards will hold their value, given the fact that all it takes to fake an autograph is a marker and some skill? There are numerous instances when PSA authenticated fake Sugimori, Jordan, Wood signatures, and thus I am wondering if investing into graded signed memorabilia is something you would consider as a viable path. I mean, signed cards are a piece of history, but I don't see any reliable way that PSA BGS can take their time in the current market to properly authenticate signatures of so many sports players or card illustrators. What do you think? Thanks in advance. Yeah, so the question about signatures and, what's going to happen in this hobby in terms of, is that a market that is ever going to take off more, become, in sports, collecting signatures is extreme. Like, everyone is after the signature cards, right? In Pokemon, we don't have signature cards in the same way that sports do, where the signature cards are, you pull those cards directly from a pack. Will Pokemon ever do something like that? That would be interesting. So to your question, I think when you get one of those signed cards in a pack and it comes on a card that you know is going to be signed, it's a good way to for us to know that something is authentic because it's supposed to be signed, versus when you take that card to get signed by an illustrator in Pokemon, or take that card to get signed by your favorite sports star. The card isn't necessarily supposed to be signed, so when that card is sent into PSA, they have to then figure out, is this a legit signature? Isn't this a legit signature? And the reality, and of course your question is right, and this happens also in the Pokemon world quite a bit, is that there are plenty of instances where we know someone actually went to get it signed in person by the actual illustrator, and then PSA didn't grade it and said that it wasn't authentic. And then there are cases where they've graded fake signatures authentic. So it is an issue on like, how do you do that? How effective is the for lack of a better word, the science of, or the art of authenticating signatures? That's definitely that's been a long time debate and conversation in collectibles hobbies, antiques and collectibles hobbies for a long time. I'm not sure I have anything to add to it that's particularly too new or interesting, but I will say that authentication, whether it's authenticating a signature or authenticating the card itself, as people get better and better at faking cards, at creating forgeries. Same thing in the art world, creating, art forgeries, the antiques and firearms world, lots and lots of forgeries. And then experts who become so well studied, in the craft, that they're the ones that we look to be able to tell us is something real or something not real, is a really important part of collectibles, because a lot of the value, or pretty much all the value, is being derived from the authenticity of the item, rather than is this a copy or a duplicate, that even if it looks exactly the same, it isn't that actual real item, whether it's a something signed or something unsigned. Just is this a real trophy card, or is this a proxy? This type of thing. So I think it's going to be an ongoing issue that I'm not sure there's a clear solution to. I think what you can do is, if you're interested in getting involved in collecting autographs or signed cards by illustrators, or trying to track those down, and I like that stuff. I think it's really cool. It's not certainly my area of expertise and where I go after, but I think it's really cool, and I think it could really take off if Pokemon ever does what sports is doing, which is, in packs of Pokemon cards, they start introducing 1 in 99 signed sketch by Arita or something. I think that would really explode that market and bring it more to the forefront if they ever decide to do that for adults. I do think that as Pokemon ages and it becomes a multi-generational thing, they likely will probably have some more adult-geared products, or products that aren't just geared towards players, more geared towards those adult collectors from multiple generations. I wouldn't be surprised if they do decide to do that. I think it would be a good thing to have both in the hobby, and to have lots of different, from very affordable items to like very expensive, high scarcity, very difficult to track down items that can really provide a chase and a fun and an opening experience for people who want to spend a lot of money. So we shall see how all that goes, but that's just going to become more and more of an issue the more the broader that gets, and I don't have a solution. I think going back to what I was saying before, I think it's about you doing research, trying to learn everything you can about what that signature is supposed to look like. There are things that you can do if you look at a bunch of signatures and someone's trying to sell you a signature and it looks completely different than all those signatures, and they don't have they can't tell you where that signature's from or who owned it before, trying to trace it back to that original person who says that they got it signed, or they don't have a picture taken where the actual card with that specific cert is being signed. That's the type of stuff that you have to be wary of. The best thing to do if you are getting signed cards can be to get your picture taken with the person who's signing your card, and ideally, if you can even show the card with the specific cert number, if they're signing a case like a PSA case, all the better. Interesting conversation for sure. Next question says, hi Jake, I wanted to know your thoughts on the current prices of the extra Battle Day promos. I know they have genuine scarcity based on the Japanese tournaments they were given out at, but I can see the prices dropping if the SM characters lose popularity, plus the artwork can be found in the Chinese sets for cheaper. Yeah, so you touched on most of the important points I would have brought up and try to bring up on these types of items. So let's talk about the pluses, the pluses of these cards. So the pluses of these cards is they provide for modern collectors, and when we think in 5 to 10 years, if they're going to be people who really don't like the vintage stuff that much, but are looking for some chase within the modern realm, because there's so much, there's 10 to 20 to 30,000, PSA of every full art card or something, if the full art cards end up continuing to go up in value, and not every, but total, that there are many PSA cards, this might provide a little bit of excitement and chase to go after an art style that you really like, which is these full art trainer cards, where there is genuine rarity and fun to chase that down. So I do see that there could be a market, certainly a market for that in the future. But you hit on the key point, right? Which is, do these have original art, or can you get the exact same art in a cheaper version somewhere else? How much is that going to matter to someone? I think it matters more to some collectors than other collectors. Even if two cards have the exact same art, and the University Magikarp is the perfect example, right? You can get the original Unicarp, or you can get a much cheaper, version of the same art. And people are still willing to pay huge amounts for that rare version because they know it's super rare. And so you're always going to see that to some extent. I just think that it takes a certain percentage of the market out, because a certain percentage of the market who might be in on getting that really expensive item because they want like one of every art don't need to get that anymore because they can just get that cheaper option. That type of stuff. What else to say on it? Yeah, I don't know. I like them. I think that they're cool, and I do like that Pokemon is introducing modern chase cards, because I think the modern style is really cool. And I would like to own some of them, and similar types of cards. I really like the Team Rocket case, like the 2 cards that came in that. I really think those cards are cool. Obviously not released in the same way, but pretty rare, pretty hard to find. I think the Art Academy cards are really amazing and actually provide you, they have the Japanese Art Academy cards, but they also have the, English and North America's cards, some of which are in English, that provide sort of an English trophy challenge for people to try and track down. That is a relatively modern card from 2015. So in terms of like the price point on those, I looked a little bit at the market. I'm not sure. There are quite a lot of them for sale. If you compare those to see how many of those are for sale versus the Art Academy cards for sale, and the prices at which they're coming out, the Art Academy cards are much harder to find. I've seen, many. I've seen a lot fewer of them, and I think the majority of the ones that we have seen are extra copies that a place like Collector's Cash was able to get their hands on, rather than the cards that are actually originally from the artists. And it may be that most of those cards never hit the market, or at all, that these people take their cards to the grave with them, or hold them. These might be young people who have them, my age, most of the people's audience age, and they may hold these cards for 40 years. So that's a long time to have no more of those cards come up on the market, or extremely few. So I would imagine those prices may be really going up a lot more, and might have more upside. And if you can get them for around the same price, or if the Art Academy cards are only a little bit more expensive, those are better options, I think. But in terms of collecting and what type of art you like, that's also going to be a big factor, because there's some Art Academy cards I think the art's amazing. I love all of the cards because I think the release is so cool and amazing, and I want to own them all for that. that like we get to that artists designed their own Pokemon cards, and then the Pokemon company made those, and there are only 100 of each in the world. Like that's that's so cool to me to own. That's really a piece of history, owning those cards to me. It just means a lot for me personally as a collector to own those cards. But some of them I think have much cooler art than other ones, whereas then they're going to be people who really like these full art trainer style, right, and aren't interested in those and just want those. So it's a vast market, tons of people in the Pokemon hobby. I think there'll be tons of people going on into the future and trying to figure out, yeah, what types of cards those people like, and how many people are going to be going for those full art cards versus how many people are going to be going for something like with a little bit more of maybe like a vintage hand drawn arty feel, like the Art Academy. So yeah, so I can't really give a definitive answer if those are like overvalued or undervalued. I think that they're a good option in this market. I think relatively they're probably overvalued to some things, but I don't think that they're. I think if you really like them, there's a market for them, and there's a good argument to be made for purchasing those cards even at this time. All right, last question. I wanted to know if/why you are feeling bullish on Pokemon in the long term. Do you think Pokemon can transition from a pop culture collectible into something that represents a piece of history, an antique? A pop collectible and something that represents a piece of history or an antique. Okay. So, yeah, so starting with how I'm feeling about Pokemon right now, bullish or bearish, I don't think anyone can predict what the long-term future of Pokemon holds. I think that there's a lot of risk in owning assets that don't produce anything, that don't have a business model or a plan. So it's really a store of value, and the value comes from people who love these things and enjoy these things. So I think if you look at it from that perspective, what you're really asking is, do we think that enough people are going to, one, have money to purchase these types of items? Are they going to have extra income, in the United States? And I think that looks good for Pokemon, because I think although we will see recessions and very bad periods economically in this country as well as across the world, the likely our country and other countries will hopefully recover from those. And although we'll probably see declines in Pokemon sales during those times, very likely, we hopefully the market will recover, and people will go back to work, and will have upward sort of financial trajectories in their life where they feel comfortable spending a percentage of that on either an item like this for some sort of investment, or a Pokemon item that they just enjoy. So I think when we think about that part of it, there will likely be more money and more interest in Pokemon over time because of the multi-generations, because as people get older, hopefully they'll have more income to spend on Pokemon, that type of stuff. I think that when we think about the demand side, more about the demand side, I think that there are a lot of questions about, are people going to want to spend their money on Pokemon? Are people going to how long are people going to be interested in Pokemon? How many people who are coming in right now are from other markets, just here speculating short term, and then are going to leave the hobby? What is really the stickiness of all these people, and where does it all end up, are sort of the big questions. And I don't know the answer to that. I think that you protect yourself by investing in things like rarity and in things that you believe the people who are going to stay really like. So when you hear a lot of people who you view as like less sticky, maybe people from some other collectible hobbies who have come here who are looking to make money, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that personally, but you have to understand that they're all the money they're infusing into the hobby, they're going to try and get out of the hobby at some point and take all that money with them and move on to the next thing when they realize they can't make money. So that could be a lot of money leaving the hobby at some point in the future. Will that be replaced by people like me and other people who are still interested and engaged in the hobby? we'll have to see over time how all of that balances out. If I had to guess, uh, I would say that we are going to see boom and bust periods. That's going to go like this, but that over time there are going to be some items and some things that never get back to the prices they are at right now, in my opinion. And then there are going to be, because they're just massively being speculated on and driven massively by speculation and not real collector interest. But I don't think there are a lot of those items. And I think even items where people are going to lose quite a bit of money on, or the value is going to go quite a bit down on those items, I think over time, Pokemon as a brand, Pokemon as a company, and Pokemon as a community is going to be engaged long enough, and there's going to be more and more money coming in, and you're going to have like time and age on your side, that even a lot of the ultra modern items now, which will never be rare items and will always be available, I think they will be less available, and there will be hopefully consistent demand that does help people at least recoup the amount of money they're putting into it now, and possibly make some more money in the future. Do you think Pokemon can transition from a pop collectible into something that represents a piece of history? Yeah, so it's all relative, right? It's all that question's sort of all in the eye of the beholder. I think that these items are historical in my life and are very important to me. Some of my most vivid memories are playing the Game Boy game, are trading cards with certain kids, certain friends when I was a kid. And so I think that if enough people have that sort of relationship to Pokemon, it will become one of these huge pop culture phenomenons that get passed down from generation to generation, and that it may even get a lot bigger than it is now. I think that's possible. I don't think it's definite, and I think that you're playing with sort of a risk when you think of it that way. And I think that a lot of people, what happens is we all price in what we think is going to happen in the future. And my feeling is that there's been, and I, have conversations with people who say that Pokemon will always go up, right? As long as you hold these items long enough, you will definitely make money. There are countless examples in other hobbies where that hasn't been true, and there are countless examples of hobbies that have died off. So, I think that just being aware that in this moment, Pokemon feels so huge and explosive and like it's going to be in our lives forever, but it may not, and generations of kids may not be as interested. The kids today may not be as interested. Their kids may not be as interested. How to predict all of that, I don't really know. Okay, so sorry. I know those answers aren't really that like useful or helpful, but it's the truth. Okay. All right, let's get to some questions. And if everyone can take a minute, if you don't mind, just taking a minute to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. I would really appreciate it if you support what we're trying to do here, which is give sort of honest, authentic perspective, my thoughts on it, having been in the hobby 3.5 years, and buying and selling a lot, and engaging sort of every day with as many different people from the hobby as possible. All right, Pikachu says, "Hey Jake, thanks for sharing your collection videos recently. I know that can be a bit private for a lot of us, but seeing what some folks have is both fun and eye-opening. Hope you're doing well." Hey, yeah. Hey, Pikachu. Yeah, so I didn't start my channel to show my collection or show off my collection. I actually am very private, and I feel weird sometimes making those videos, and like these cards are for me, and I don't want people knowing exactly what I have. Both from a tactical buying selling perspective, to be completely honest, but I think even more fundamentally from a like I'm not trying to show it off or be like, I was very against and always felt it's this weird sort of thing when you have a channel like this. It's like I want you guys to listen to my my arguments, not trust me or believe in me just because I have a large collection or built a lot, and I had a lot of people come to me and say that they listen to people who have like really large collections because they definitely know what they're doing, or they have really good economic or fundamental market analysis and these sorts of things. And those two things are definitely not necessarily true or hand in hand. So I think separating there are people who have pretty small collections who are extremely savvy, and then there are people with really big collections who are not particularly market savvy and are just lovers of the game and collectors, or have a lot of money and paid way more for certain things than they needed to just because they wanted to, and it was fun for them. So I think that is part of why. And I don't know. I guess I really collected for myself. I never collected to be on Instagram or start a channel. Even when I was in high school, I didn't really have social media. I didn't. My friends like made my Facebook for me, like that type of stuff. Like I just never, I never liked that. I never got that, and it always made me uncomfortable how kind of fakey and artificial, and everyone kind of posting like really great moments from their life and sharing those types of things. I'd always felt a little bit like that's just going to make people feel bad, or that's just going to make people, give just like one side of their life. I think the counter argument to that, which is a really good argument, which is that people like to celebrate publicly and they want to celebrate with other people. And so a good way to connect with a lot of people and celebrate a lot of things very publicly is posting your achievements and these sorts of things on social media to get a lot of that positive feedback. And I think that's good. I just think that for me, I was always uncomfortable with that. So I really started my channel because because I'm actually most interested, I think, in teaching fundamental investing skills, and my idea of what value investing is, using Pokemon as a tool to do that, and to comment as a commentary channel on what other people are doing in the hobby and other influencers, and trying to help make this a kind of friendlier, kinder, more thoughtful, nuanced community. So just kind of try to engage in those conversations to help make that happen, that type of thing. So, but I go back and forth because I think that people do like seeing the cards and enjoy seeing the cards, and I think it can be valuable to see what I collected and talk about why I collected it and what I like and what I don't like. So, I don't know. You can't win. It seems like you can't win with some of this stuff. Paul Trimman says, "Hey Jake, collector since 2014 here. I started as a Timmy, and over the first 2 to 3 years only bought singles from Base, Jungle, Fossil, Gem, and Rocket. Altogether, I spent around 3,000 in those years. I was a collector, but now I'm overwhelmed because I don't know what to do with all of these. I only kept Near Mint Plus and wanted to get them graded, but now PSA turned into Jews, and I'm working poor, and the collector inside me wants to keep them all, but they're worth so much now. At the same time, I'm no longer having fun. I feel like an investor now. I want to hold them, but I have 30K in Ultra Pro." Yes, you have some different options. You can, let's see. So you're no longer having fun. Yeah. So, I mean, one thing to do is really try to figure out what your goals are here, Paul. So if it's not fun to own this amount of value, one, either figure out if you can stop thinking about the value and just go back to like enjoying them for what they are, and get off YouTube and get off all the social media that's constantly talking about the value. And maybe that'll help you kind of rekindle your enjoyment. I know I really would be far less engaged in all this online culture and stuff if I wasn't doing this channel where I felt some responsibility or obligation to really know what's going on so I can comment on it. So I think taking breaks, I take breaks, I go to my binders, just hang out with those, that type of thing. I think that if you decide that that isn't possible, or that the $30,000 or however much it is really going to change your life, then it becomes this question of, do you get them graded? Do you not get them graded? Do you, sell them in a big lot? Do you sell them one at a time? And all of that's a very personal decision, and it's a lot of hard work. And the harder you're willing to work, the more you're probably going to make, likely. Because if you sell them all to someone like me, I'm probably only going to offer you, 60% of the value, maybe even a lot less if they're completely raw. If you send me a lot of cards, for example, that are sort of mint, maybe a few gem mint, but let's say mostly I think they're going to be 9s, I'm probably going to want to pay you the PSA 8 prices for everything. And if you took the time and sent them all out, and they all came back PSA 9s, or on average they came back PSA 9, you would make a lot more money by sending them off and then selling them. Now, if you really don't think that they're 9s and you think that they're more 8s and 7s, I'm not sure there's so much value in grading them. It's going to depend on the card, and you kind of have to sit down and you have to do the research and learn the market yourself. So it's part of why someone like Rusty from TCA Gaming provides such a service. Like he deals with probably a lot of people in a similar situation, of people maybe who, and this may not be your situation exactly, Paul, but people who maybe have a large collection. This may not have anything to do with you, Paul, actually, but people who may have a large collection or may have found a large collection that they had in the past, and they just don't know what it's worth. They're not going to take the time to educate themselves and learn. They're not going to do all the work of sitting down and selling it and breaking it apart, and they just want the quick money. And someone like TCA Gaming, like Rusty, who will be very upfront with them and say, I'm going to pay you, 60% or 40%, depending on what it is, of the value, and I'm probably going to make money on this. But he gets the benefit of having an audience to sell to, of having an eBay store that has a great reputation, of his knowledge and collector skill to be able to assess the value of those things, his understanding of grading, and which ones to grade, which ones not to grade. So there's all sorts of information that someone like he has, that someone like I have, that give us that competitive advantage that someone may not have, that someone else may not have. And so we can make our profit on our ability to be able to do that someone else wouldn't have. I hope that makes sense. So you have to figure out how much work you want to put in. Do you want to become an expert? Or do you want to just sell to someone who's already fairly an expert or fairly experienced, and understanding that you're gonna leave quite a bit of meat on the bone for them to also make? And that's a personal decision. Michael Borman says, is it gold plated? Because hot damn, that's an expensive Ultra Pro. Hey Winters, hey Michael, powerlifting basic trainer. Nice to see everyone. Looks like some people are responding to you, Paul, giving some thoughts. Powerlifting says, I have a lot of questions about your opinion on sealed product 5 years from now. Would this era of 2020, 2021 have really valuable sealed product like Hidden Fates, Vivid Voltage, Shining Fates? So I have been thinking quite a bit about modern sealed product and how valuable modern sealed product is going to be. And I think the key points, I think that there's a good argument to be made that it could end up being valuable, because there's such big demand right now, an explosion of demand, and they don't seem to be printing nearly enough. And that can be a good recipe for they're being little enough product and enough demand, both now and then maybe people remembering these sets in 5 to 10 years, for those sets to appreciate and really go up in value. I think the problem is that the market has way overreacted to that potential and has already priced in all of those gains and more, and in my view, of what I would expect like a normal gain on some of this stuff to be, or more normal across the history of Pokemon and across other types of collectibles. But we're seeing that huge type of explosion in lots of different hobbies, and so there really is no way to assess that or judge what's going to happen when we come out of the pandemic and people leave their houses and all the things we talk about on the channel. I do think there's a case that it's possible. I think one of the big negatives is going to be that the cards inside are likely never going to be that valuable, because and a lot of the incentive to buy sealed vintage product, when we think about buying sealed vintage product, there are two incentives. One is people love putting it up as a piece of history and the beauty of the boxes, those types of things. And then the other is people like to open them because it gives them the best possibility of finding new 10s, new gem mint 10s, particularly when we're talking about like super low pop, like Neo cards. It's just so unlikely that they're going to be like more T17 cards, right? Or Slow King, or basically like 20 to 30 of those different cards in Neos are all like PSA 30 pops or less in PSA 10. So, and really the only way that that's going to increase is breaking open this product. And so that's part of, and then the premium of just the gambler's premium and enjoyment of opening the product places all the higher value on that. But when we compare that to modern, there are going to be tons and tons of binders filled with like gem mint hidden fates cards, probably forever. And so and it's so much easier to grade. I'm just not sure there's ever going to be that like extreme enjoyment or premium of like, oh my god, I'm going to open this and I could possibly get the like 31st 10 in the world, or the 10th 10 ever, that type of thing. So I'd be careful with it for that reason. Yeah, but we'll have to see. Basic Trainer says, human nature question. Gem and Pokemon said this week that for people that are complaining about the market, the Pokemon market does not care about your feelings. So why do we keep complaining? Well, so people are complaining, and then people are complaining about the complainers, and then someone's complaining about the complainer. I think that everyone wants to feel like a hero, and everyone wants to feel like they're the good guy and the hero of their own story. Or the vast majority of people want to feel that way. And everyone kind of defines what a hero is differently. And then and then in order to be a hero, you have to define a villain. And so for one person, the villain is the scalpers. For another person, the villain is the person complaining about the scalpers, right? So I think that just understanding and having a little bit of humility that I'm the same way, everyone in the chat's the exact same way, and no one can ever really escape that that trap, I think allows you to come in these conversations with a little bit of like more humanity and understanding that you're not really like above anyone else in any like deep sort of significant way. We're all stuck in the same human condition. That being said, when we kind of move up a level, I do think that suffering is a good measure of is something important or is something not important. So if something is causing like a lot of suffering in people, then it's probably worth calling out or talking about or trying to correct that problem. And so I think that there is a certain amount of suffering in the Pokemon community, we could say. I've said that this is not food. These are pieces of cardboard. This isn't food and water. So we have to, I think it can get extreme in terms of the level of anger and animosity that people can have, but I think it's also very tone deaf for extremely wealthy, rich people who own every card to look down on people who don't own any cards and are upset about not owning any cards for whatever reason they're upset. Whether they're upset because they just want to, enjoy the hobby, whether they're upset because they're actually really jealous and they wish they had a lot of money in it and they wish they had done things differently. And if they were being honest with themselves, there's really some of that combination of those things. I think I'm most sympathetic to parents with kids just naturally because it feels like if I collected Pokemon and Pokemon's really important to me and I could share those like really amazing intergenerational moments with my kids, and my kid really wanted Pokemon or was at an age where he just really wanted it and we were having so much fun together, and I was lower socioeconomic and I maybe didn't have the funds to spend on buying packs. And I certainly know, I mean, when I was a kid, it was like I was just hoping to get a pack every couple weeks, type of thing. And if the packs were more expensive, maybe my parents, I wasn't my family certainly was fairly well off and middle class to upper middle class, but even we didn't, my parents might have been like $15 for cardboard. That's insane. I'm never buying that. I'm sure my parents would have had that that sort of response, and I think they'd probably be making a good point. So I might have missed out on some of that, and so I think kids might be missing out on some of that, which stinks. Um, I think just bringing like the tone down a little bit, and like, I mean, my channel's been focused on calling out people who I think are manipulating their audiences, over promising that people are going to make a ton of money on Pokemon. And I think it becomes this lose-lose situation where not only are kids not getting the cards and these sorts of things, but I think a lot of people who really shouldn't be buying and shouldn't be investing in these sort of items are going to end up losing money also. So it's going to be like it's like a lose-lose for everyone. But yeah, there are people who are, I think, feeling really upset, who I think if I talk to them, I would be like really understanding, and I would feel like that's really justified and it sucks, and let me buy you a pack, or can we help you brainstorm a plan for how you're going to be more engaged in the community. And then there are people who I think are mostly probably just jealous or resentful of the fact that other people worked harder, made smarter decisions, or saw angles that they didn't. These types of things, and maybe it would be better if they took a little bit of more on the personal responsibility side of their sort of predicament, or their situation also has a lot to do with their personal responsibility. I think there's plenty of blame to go around always. There's blame to go against me. I've said and done things on this channel that I'm sure have caused issues. So it's tricky. I don't think any one person should have the ethical or moral high ground, and yet I think we all want to, and we all spend our time talking in a way that we do have the ethical and moral high ground. And I think that at the end of the day, as long as we come off that pedestal, I think it is good to speak your mind and say your moral and ethical piece. And then you need to step back and like listen to what other people say, and hopefully be open to changing your opinion and shifting your opinion. That's how I try to operate as a human. I'm definitely not always successful, because I can get irritated and frustrated. So I'm glad the conversation's happening. And I'm glad someone like Gem and Pokemon is sharing their opinion. I'm glad Gary and a lot of different people are sharing their opinion. I'm really glad that Frosted Caribou made her video, which I think points to some of this stuff. I think she's from all accounts, and just from my, I guess, human instinct of talking with her a little bit and watching her channel, seems like such a nice, lovely person who cares so much about her community and about people not having things that they want to have, and is upset that people who are making millions and millions of dollars, like some of these influencers, don't seem to care at all, that they're making millions while other people are struggling to afford anything. Like, I think just on a human level, it's bad form. It's a little bit of a bad form to be punching down. And even if you think that people are overreacting or being irresponsible, when you own all of the cards and when you have tons of money, like, punching down is tone deaf and not helpful at all, really. And so I think trying to have a little bit of like a back and forth and humility is what's needed in the conversation, I think. Paul Tremont says that he's working poor and that he can't bring himself to sell in order to grade. Yeah, so this is a situation, Paul, kind of where it's difficult. These are really hard. It's really hard. It's a personal decision. It's not a decision I can make for you, and I think that it's an ethical dilemma that a lot of people are in, where what I would say is you can also start, going back to your initial first question, you can start by grading just the most expensive cards and the cards that you think you're going to get the best value from. And I would start with the things that you're really sure are going to get like 9s and 10s, and where the amount you're going to make on getting that 9 or 10 is really huge. And just like, you don't need to be in a rush. Take your time with it. So. Oh, looks like people are kind of going back and forth and maybe being a little bit rude here. Let's see. All right. I'm going to move on to the next question. I didn't read in detail. Please, everyone, be respectful in the comment section. I might have to make some mods here. I'm gonna make you a mod, Mason. If you see anyone just like being rude or disrespectful, if you can just like give them a little bit of a timeout. I encourage people to say really what they think. I want people to say what they think, but there's a way to say what you think while also being humble and realizing that you may not be right, and you don't have to like attack the other person and assume you know everything, okay? And like be super arrogant with your opinions. Okay? Okay. Connor B says, nice logo. Thanks, man. Good to see you, Connor. Thanks for coming. PokeGeekDom says, hey, Jake, if Amazing Rares continue their trend of only being mythical Pokemon, is there a particular Pokemon that would stand out above the rest? I'm thinking Mew, Lugia, Ho-Oh, but interested in your thoughts. Yeah, I think Lugia probably. For me, yeah, probably Lugia and Mew would probably be the two for me. And then probably Rayquaza, I think maybe over Ho-Oh. But everyone's going to have their own sort of personal. I do really like Ho-Oh, but I just don't think Ho-Oh's generally, Ho-Oh's cards are quite on that level. Although part of it is because Ho-Oh doesn't have as many really high-end vintage chase cards. Like it didn't get that gold star treatment, so we can't really compare it to some of those other cards. I guess the highest end one is going to be the Crystal one, which is a gorgeous card, and then also, of course, the original from Neo Rev. Hey, Cool Trainer Tony and PokeGeek, good to see you guys. PokeGeek Dom says, what products do you view as short tail investments, long tail investments, due to turnaround times has grading plus flipping transition from short tail to long tail? Let's see. Let's see. I don't really know. I mean, honestly, I can tell you what I'm doing. I am not buying a lot. I'm buying rare cards, like trophy cards. I'm buying, still looking for, I'm not finding any, and they've all gone up in value a decent amount, but World's promo cards, Art Academy cards, expensive cards. There are a few others that I haven't talked about that I don't even want to say because I don't want people to go out and buy them out. So I'm looking for those types of more niche cards where I think my experience gives me the advantage of knowing what this item actually is versus the vast majority. I'm on just like a wait and see on the vast majority of cards right now. I wouldn't be panic selling. I wouldn't be fear of missing out buying. I think now's a time to be patient. I think it's a good time to sell. I think it's a perfectly fine, good, solid time to sell. I wouldn't not sell during this time, and I am selling as good offers come in. Certain things I am selling, but I'm also not in a great rush to dump everything at these prices because I'm afraid that they're tomorrow going to have all of a sudden in value. So we'll see. I think that there are forces pushing prices down and there are forces pushing prices up. So. Hey, Mason. Hey, CJ. Hey, Jake. CJ says, hey, Jake, looking forward to today's chat. As always, thank you for sharing your collection and great conversation with Jarvis. Thank you, CJ, for always being so supportive and positive. I really appreciate it. Hey, William. Good to see you here, too. Always asking great questions. Team Trubbish, good to see you. Car 1988. Mason Berry says, can we all take a moment and talk about what a crime it is that Jake has so few subs? Because him with Jarvis would have had huge potential. It was a fantastic watch. Thanks, Mason. I appreciate the that. I don't know. I think that like, how many people really want to hear this type of content? I think is a fair question. This type of like analysis around Pokemon cards. Like, I think it's probably a limited market. And then I think, my video quality and other sorts of things as well has limited it. I know that if I made modern videos, I think the vast majority of people are looking for modern videos that always tend to do well, and I just haven't been doing like my opinion on Shining Fates, and because I just don't feel like I have anything to add to that conversation. So I'm going to continue to try to make content that I enjoy making, that I think's interesting and useful, and I'm going to hope that there's enough audience for this channel to grow big enough. And if not, then, to quote Jarvis, build the community and audience that you want, and that like your content, and in that way you at least like what you're doing, even if it's for a smaller group of people, and you don't make as much money or get as much notoriety for it, that type of thing. Let's see what else we got here. Hey, Josh. Gustavo. TCG Authority says, hey, Jake, do you think attention will stay for Japanese cards long term, as well as English, or do you think English will always remain king? I think that certainly they've moved closer. I think what's happened with some of the exclusive Japanese cards, from TCG cards like Versus Series to pre-TCG, Top Soon, this type of stuff, show that there is a large market for Japanese cards as well, and for sort of like that original feel that Japanese provides. I think that makes perfect sense. I think it shows that people really love this hobby and love the history and want to collect the historical items, and don't just need to be able to like read the cards and really appreciate the Japanese art and some of the Japanese exclusive art. And I think that that's really cool. I know I quickly appreciated that. I think about 6 months into the hobby, I really started collecting Japanese and really fell in love with it and enjoyed it, and spent most of the time learning about Japanese and learning about all the different variations of different sorts of unique, just non-TCG type items. So I think it's probably at a pretty good place right now. But these are types of things that no one person like I can have. I don't have a definitive answer of where it's going to go. It wouldn't shock me if Japanese became more valuable and became closer in value to English. It wouldn't shock me if English then had another resurgence and went far ahead of Japanese, and even more ahead of Japanese. So let's see. Jamie J. Mayer says, are amazing rares still going to be made? I don't know what Pokemon's plans are, if how many more amazing rares they're going to make, if they're going to make more, that sort of thing. Sam DT75 says, do you think if they allocated more stock for local stores versus Walmart, etc., this would be better? I feel like we could pre-order more, and it would stop a lot of retail scalpers / mugging the restock people. I don't know the answer to that. Mason would have a better sense of the ins and outs of if that would actually make a difference in terms of prices for like. It certainly would be better for the LGSs. It certainly would be better for Mason. I'm not sure if that would be passed down to the end consumer, because I would imagine it wouldn't. They would still want to make as much money as they could. Maybe they would lower their prices a bit because they could make more money than they were, and they would want to pass some of that savings on to the consumer. But if they can sell for, they're still the same amount of boxes, so if they can sell for higher and people are actually going to buy it, they're probably going to continue to do that mostly. Mudkip Z says, do you have some kind of Google Trends tracker for what Pokemon is the most popular, etc.? Seems like it can make certain Pokemon into social arb trades. Yeah, there are people who definitely try and buy and sell even Pokemon and other sport and other collectibles and certainly sports by trying to follow what are the most talked about cards, what are the most talked about sets, that sort of thing, by using data. All right. Let's see where we are here. Oops, lost my place here. Grab it again. Stephen Kassoon says, many persons liken the current Pokemania to the 1999 one. Do you think it's possible to see a down period just like we had after that time too? Yes. I mean, it's inevitable that we're going to see a downtime. So it may keep growing beyond what it's been growing before we see a downtime, but it's 100% we're going to see a downtime at some point. Nathan Gardner says, did you see the alternate arts from Chilling Reign? Sheesh looks clean as hell. I have not seen the Chilling Reign cards yet. Maybe I'll take a look after this live. What do you think about the future of Japanese exclusive promos? I think they're good. I think that clearly people really like them. There is a lot of demand for them. I also do think that they are highly speculated on and flipped and moved around a lot. I think, again, it's going to go to that uniqueness of art. And one thing that people do not talk enough about is that there are going to be so many of everything. You know, there are going to be so many Pikachu promos. There are going to be so many options of all of these cards in 10 to 15 to 20 years if Pokemon keeps printing and keeps making more and doing more and more colorful, shiny, crazy, rare options, that why is your specific promo going to stand out? What about it is going to make it stand out? So things like the Mario, Luigi Pikachus, the Scream promos, the Poncho Pikachu's cards, like those really stand out, I think. The Poncho Eevee cards. I think some of the other ones are like really beautiful and really cool, and I can definitely see, particularly all the different Pikachu ones with all the different cool arts. I think that they're highly collectible. I think that they're beautiful cards, and I can see people always wanting them. There are lots of Pikachu collectors who just collect Pikachu who will want all of those forever. But it's like how much money is going to be in those, and then if they make 1,000 more over the next 15 years, is there going to be enough money for the prices on those to really keep going up if the prices are already so high on some of them? And what I would imagine is going to happen is that some of them are going to kind of continue to go up and continue to sort of get more and more valuable because everyone wants those, and then a lot of them are going to maybe go down a little bit or be a bit more stagnant in value because just people do want them to complete the sets or get all the promo cards, but maybe they don't want them as much. And would rather spend the money on the newest one that they could get for cheaper or for free depending on the release. Financially, how do you manage to spike? How did you manage the spike in Pokemon prices, making collectibles a larger than normal portion of your net worth? Do you sell off some and buy more traditional assets like stocks? Yeah, I managed it with a lot of sleepless nights because it was very stressful. I was not planning on selling much this year. I did not expect Pokemon to explode right away. I expected prices to certainly go up a lot over time. It's why I bought so much. It's why I bought many, many doubles of things, because I thought these items were extremely investable and extremely collectible. But I was expecting to hold these and enjoy these for many years before I felt a sort of financial, we could say, obligation to myself and to my family to sell. But I have felt that this year, and that's why I have sold. Because when you see 25, 50 times growth in items, not to even mention just 3 times growth, 2 times, 3 times growth, it makes sense to at least take, I think, in most cases, money off the table. So at least sell enough that you're taking, you're at least breaking even with your initial purchase costs, and then maybe also taking a little bit extra and putting that into something like stocks, real estate, bonds, what have you. Other types of collectibles, because I think that even diversifying across other types of collectibles can be safer, particularly if they're not all pop culture collectibles, antiques, art, whatever, as long as you're educated and understand those markets. So for me personally, yes. I mean, I sold both to take all my money off the table, and I sold and moved some of that money into other places. So in terms of like a percentage, like I think that you have to figure that out for yourself, what your comfort level is. I think that if I were like your personal, person consulting this, or we were having a conversation, and I'm not a financial advisor, but my basic opinion would also have to do with your age, with how much cash. I think when you're younger, you can afford more risk. I think you can afford putting things into like the higher risk reward type stuff. I think that particularly if you have a good job where you have a lot of cash flow, and where you're not going to be dependent on your assets for basic living expenses. I think when you're in that type of situation, you can take more risks with your money that have potential higher upside. If you're not in that sort of financial position, I think that it makes a lot more sense to be a lot more conservative until you get more money, and slowly build your money up over time, and then take some of those more risky. I think that the reality is that human psychology actually works the exact opposite, unfortunately, which is why sometimes poor people can really stay poor, and rich people can really stay rich in some instances. There are lots of reasons why that is, but one reason is that oftentimes when things are really bad, there's a feeling of like, I need to swing for the fences and hit a home run because it's so bad that only something dramatic is going to make things better, instead of being like, no, what will make things better is taking like little baby steps and hitting singles over and over and over again, and slowly working myself out of this debt or out of this situation. And I think that that's totally understandable on a human nature level, and I empathize a lot with that. But I think it's part of why things like lottery tickets and gambling is so attractive to people who are doing it in some situations to get rich quick, to so that they can dramatically change their lives because their lives feel painful and don't feel good. And I'm very sympathetic to that. But I think that the best advice is to set up a plan that has a very high percentage of you escaping your situation, and by doing it slowly over time, and by giving yourself a lot of positive feedback and support and encouragement. Okay. Much easier for me to say that than do that. These are not things that I take lightly or think are easy. Jay Auger says, can you go over what would be the biggest reasons for the card bubble to burst? Sure. I mean, the biggest reason, let's think for a second. I mean, the biggest reason for the card bubble to burst. So the biggest reason for the card bubble to burst is the amount of speculators who have very little interest in Pokemon, very little interest in cards, and are only buying these cards to later sell them down the line. Not to throw anyone under the bus, but when we look at someone like Sasha T, who bought that $400,000 Charizard, you can see in that video, and you can look it up online, and zero hate to anyone in that video. That's not where I'm going with this, but he literally is like, I'm buying this card because I think it's going to be $1 million in a year. When everyone starts buying items because they think it's going to be $1 million in a year, and he bought that PSA 10 first edition Charizard or traded for it, when everyone has that type of thinking, that's a bubble. That's when you know that someone eventually either it keeps going, right, and you keep selling to the next person who thinks it's going to be 2 million, and the person who buys it at 1 million thinks it's going to be 2 million, but it creates a unstable environment. It's much better when you get a lot of people saying, I'm buying this card and I'm never selling it, and I don't care if it goes up or down, and where that's really true. And when you have a large portion of expensive cards being held by people who have that type of relationship to the cards, that's when the cards don't get flipped and don't get sold a lot. And that's when you don't have to worry about too many being on the market at any one time, where there are now more on the market than people wanting to buy the cards for those prices. And that's when you see retraces. So we'll have to see. I don't know when that's going to happen, but that type of thinking, and if the majority of the market is made up of that type of thinking and people doing that, it causes a bubble and causes bad things to happen. That being said, it's not unethical. Like, that is what being a speculator is not at all unethical. It's just highly risky. And I think people lose me when I'm making this argument, because they think I'm like, what he's doing is bad, and it's like, no, it's not. There's nothing bad about it. It's extremely risky for him, I would say, to operate like that. In a market that is so, that where those Charizards within a year have 10x'd in value, and now he's saying it's going to triple again. I think that we're talking diminishing returns as it goes up, and increasing risk every time it goes up another 10, 20, 30, 100%. So that's just common sense, basic investing. But there are reasons to think that card could go to 1 million. So, and he's willing to take that risk. But so go, and I'm not even saying it was a bad risk or he shouldn't have done that. Okay, because he has his own financial situation, and it's probably worth the risk for him. And I congratulate him on owning such a cool card and doing that. I mean, that's fantastic. So, but if the market's made up of all people like that who don't have that much core interest in Pokemon, who don't want to hold the card forever, it creates bubbles. Okay, and card inflation. Let's see what else we got here. Pick out a few more questions here. Mads VH says, hey Jake, love the streams. I listen to them on my way to work whenever there's new content available. Thank you for making this content, and have a good stream. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Alex Coronado says, hey Jake, do you think the Charizard from EX Crystal Guardians Reverse Holo with the stamp is undervalued compared to other Charizards in the hobby, and also the regular holographic version? Yeah, I think cards from those eras and the reverse stamp cards are undervalued, particularly compared to some modern options, because those cards are gorgeous and amazing looking, a lot of them. I'm not going to say that card specifically is like way more undervalued than other cards from those eras, but yes. I also think like the Plasma Storm Charizard, like I think that the fact that some of these Charizards are going for like less than, a Hidden Fates Charizard, a Burning Shadows Charizard, these types of things is a sign of the times, and is a sign of that the most popular cards right now are the Hidden Fates, are those cards. And so I'm not saying I don't think the market's wrong for right now, but I think in the long term that will correct. And when we look back on these things, the card that's 15 years older, much more difficult to grade, and it's from like the original Nintendo, some of the original Nintendo sets will have the history. Although I do think also, frankly, Hidden Fates Charizard is going to have history to it as well. It's just going to suffer more from the amount that there are, and the fact that it's not, there are going to be a lot of other shining Charizards in the future, which in some ways will maybe help that value of that card, because it'll be the first full art shining card ever of that card, which I think does create some history. But in other ways, it's going to hurt it, because it just provides more and more options to own a very similar looking card that has similar characteristics. So. William N says, I think most collectors care about the Pokemon rather than the artist. That is definitely true at this stage, and I think will always probably be true to a certain extent, but unlike in sports where you're having the person who is on the card sign the card, you're not having like the person who like manufactured the card or designed the card at the company, right, sign the card. Um, in Pokemon, you're having the artist, the person who designed the card, design the art. You're not having Pikachu sign the card, right? So I think that that's true. Although I think over time, particularly if they start talking more about the artist, if the artists ever become more public and there's more and more people stay in the hobby for a long time and become more like historians of the hobby, you will see an increased number of people really appreciate the different artists. And there already are a number of people who love certain artists and try to collect all of the cards of that artist and hunt down those signatures, and you will have more. And, another thing to say on those signatures is that there are certain artists who like almost never sign. Certain artists like Arita, where it's pretty prevalent, and, came to the States for a while and went to a lot of these like conventions where he was paid to sign lots and lots of things. Other Pokemon artists haven't done that, or have only done it, have done it very infrequently. And so those items are really hard to find and track down. And so even if the pool is smaller in terms of the demand pool for those types of items, the supply is also so small that they fetch really high prices. Giuliano says, hey, Jake, what's your opinion on BGS 9.5 quad plus graded cards? Do you consider them equivalent to PSA 10s or better? So it's a buy the card, not the grade situation. Generally speaking, if I see a quad BGS, I assume it's going to be PSA 10 quality. But you can't. But I would actually look at the card to judge that and assess that myself. I think the reality is that the market isn't going to pay as much for it. When you start getting to the quad stuff, though, and when you start getting, that's when you start, and quad plus, that's when you start seeing people do pay almost as much as the PSA 10 price, and maybe over time they eventually will pay the exact same. Maybe not. Okay? I mean, the one thing about PSA 10 is there are PSA 10 cards out there that would get a black label probably, or that would get close to a black label. So there are going to be PSA 10 cards that have the higher chance of being probably better than that. There are also going to be PSA cards that are going to be lower than the BGS 9.5 quad. So in terms of like the actual quality of the card. Mason Berry says, seeing Pokemon as multi-generational, that's an interesting concept. Yeah, and I think, too, the Pokemon Company embracing that, right, it is going to be interesting to see if the Pokemon Company really embraces this is a thing. We're going to create content for adults. We're going to create content for middle age. We're going to take, for young adults. We're going to create content for kids. Like, are they ever going to look at it that way and embrace that? Should be interesting. Josh Harris says, just want to say I'm sick of people bidding on items they don't intend on paying for and wasting people's time of the 7-day auction and then having to relist it for another 7 days. Yeah, I can definitely empathize. That's, in some cases it's legit, but in most cases it's either kind of a buyer's remorse, and you really need to pay for the item if you won the item. In my opinion, I've had buyer's remorse a couple of times, and I've never not paid for an item. Or it's a shill bidding situation where they just didn't want the item to sell for that little because they're trying to keep the appearance of the price high because they own that card. Daniel Ruiz said, just started a Vivid Voltage Master set. It's my first set binder ever. I underestimated how fun this is. That's awesome. Yeah, I love creating binders too. I'm with you. Blue Goose Collectible says, these full art trainers are so confusing. You can buy a PSA 10 trainer full art raw for $50, but the PSA 10 is $500. Yes, be very careful. And there's going to be a lot of people who notice that and who are trying to buy up a lot of the raw supply, which is pushing the raw supply up, which is then being sent to PSA. And because a lot of that supply hasn't come back from PSA or been graded from PSA yet, seeing all the raw cards get bought up for higher and higher prices then pushes the PSA 10 cards for higher and higher, but eventually the gap will close. So, be interesting to see where all of that ends up resting, and it will depend on the card because some full arts are going to be a lot harder to grade than other full arts. So, and we don't know that necessarily until enough of them have actually been graded and we see what the pop reports actually look like. Earth Savior says, just acquired both the Mario and Luigi Pikachu promo boxes. Do you think I should open them up or keep them sealed? For value, you should keep them sealed, I think. Because you can't, open them up. You can't seal it back up. So keeping it sealed gives you that option to sell it as a sealed item to someone who collects sealed items and or who wants to open it and try and grade one and take that gamble and see if they can get 10s on them. So generally, keeping things sealed is always going to get you that higher profit unless you get fortunate and you do open them up and maybe they are both 10s. And even then, I'm not even sure where the prices are at right now. You'd have to do that equation. It's like even then, even if I do get 10s on both, am I going to make more money by doing it that way, or does the sealed still have a premium? But to answer it as a collector, do whatever you want and enjoy. Jody Matama says, "Oh man, the camera quality is A+." And if you're enjoying the content and any of my answers are helpful, if you can take a second to hit that like button, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Matthias Norbrick says, "Hi Jake, what do you think about the Marvel Universe Series 1 cards now?" So I'm not following Marvel super closely after I watched that initial huge spike. I'd have to take another look. So sorry I can't answer that specifically. I do own quite a few Marvel cards, but I also have been selling some because the prices got very high. GCS says, "Nice binder collection you have back there, Jake." Yep, these are some of my binders. So we've got, up into here, we have all, like, Wizards of the Coast. Actually, I think to here is Wizards of the Coast. And then we have a bunch of modern stuff, and I think a couple of those binders are doubles of modern. So mostly vintage. Of modern, I only keep the some of the chase cards in there. Whereas, like, the vintage, I completed whole like, sets. That's part of why it took up so much more space. And my sort of, like, my modern bulk, we could say, is all sitting in boxes. Johnny Matomo says that he likes the new logo. Goes with the channel name perfectly. Have you thought of removing both of your names from the channel's name? Curious. Yes, that's actually brings up a good point. I am going to be changing the name of the channel. We are going to change it to Pokenomics and get rid of the with Jake and Rafi because it's just cleaner and easier for people to say. Both Jake, both myself and Rafi will both be continuing to be involved and engaged in the channel, but yeah, we think Pokenomics is just a better, cleaner name. It was actually our plan all along to do that. Eventually. All right, let's see what other questions we've got. Pull some from the middle here. Jody Matoma asks, "Do you think Legend cards will become far more expensive than they are today? They truly are quite different than any other Pokemon card out there." Yeah. I feel mixed on the Legend card. So I think part of the problem is that people don't like having, like, half of a Pokemon on one card or having half a card on one card and half a card on the other card. I think that was always part of why people didn't initially gravitate towards them that much. They are definitely cool and unique, and they're very beautiful. And if you have both and you put them together and you kind of display them in the right way, it is cool looking. But a lot of the cards themselves, if you just have like one of the cards without the other half, like I think are kind of weird looking just by themselves in that case alone. So definitely were undervalued for a long time. I own some of them, but I'm not sure. One, how popular were they ever initially? Do people feel really connected to those cards? And then two, that's sort of like you need to kind of collect both of them, and how do you display them in a way that looks really good type issue. But I like the way you're thinking in terms of like what makes something stand out, or and if they make more cards like that, it could increase the value of those cards because people might really like the new ones, start collecting the new ones, and then they're going to want the old ones. Similarly, I think honestly how Hidden Fates really increased the prices of Shining Legends. I think people were really into shinies, and it was like, well, let's collect the older shinies too, and then of course like the Neo Destiny Shinings and Gold Stars. D-Seller says, hey, just wanted to say that I'm a big fan of your channel and what it represents. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you so much. Appreciate you hanging out with us. LKG says, hey, I hope all is well. Do you have an opinion on Diamond and Pearl, Platinum Era Japanese sealed product? Thank you for your time. Do I have an opinion on the Diamond and Pearl Platinum Era Japanese sealed product? I think it has... let me think. So, I think it has some potential. I actually really like the... In English, they're reverse shiny cards from those sets. And there are so few of them in Japanese. I just have found so few of those cards. I found so few... I've seen so few of those booster boxes from that generation. It's an issue of like demand. Like, are people gonna ever want the Japanese ones as much as the English? And then how high are the English ones gonna get? And then is that gonna pull up the Japanese, or are the Japanese gonna be, in some cases, as desirable as some of the English because they're even harder to find? These types of questions. I'm a big fan of Diamond and Pearl. I think that level X's are good looking cards. I always felt that since I was in the beginning. The thing you have to be wary of, as I will continue to repeat about those, is that we just don't know how many are going to surface now, and are there people who were humongous D and Pearl era collectors who have been sort of silent, who are going to start to sell some of their collection, and like sealed collection and other sorts of things, because they were like hoarding the product when it was in Walmart and waiting for this sort of opportunity, and is more of it going to come out over time, and thus more mint and gem mint type cards over time. So I think that's likely going to happen. These are mass produced items, so just be careful. Heck, I mean, look at like Team Rocket, Fossil, first edition. I've been watching videos just at like the Dallas convention thing, the Collecticon, and there's just like I didn't go there specifically, so I don't know if the videos gave a bit of a false impression, but it seemed like there were so many just like loose packs of like first edition cards. Just everyone had like a bunch of them in a number of different cases. So there's so many of these things still out in the world, and in each of those first edition, a lot of those might be light packs, but you have to think like they're very likely 9 holos, even probably a decent chance at 10 holos for some of those rocket holos because they're so easy to grade. You have to just be aware that as prices continue to go up, or if they're able to even sustain themselves, more and more of the product is going to hit the market, and then you need more and more demand and more people still being willing to buy those at the same prices over and over to keep absorbing it. So I think I'm going to go to the bottom of the chat and just like hang out with you guys for the last 30 minutes or so. All right, so I apologize if your questions were somewhere in the middle and they didn't get answered. That's sort of the way these lives work, because there's just like 100+ questions, and I just can't get to them all. Feel free to ask your questions again at the bottom if they were somewhere in the middle, or if I missed your question, and we can talk from there. But otherwise, I'm just going to read and hang out. Mason says we're just vibing down here. Yeah, it's nice to be like in the active chat. When I'm like going through all these questions, I always feel like I'm like out of what people are actually talking about in the live moment. I almost wonder if it like defeats the live to some degree. But I don't know exactly how to do this any better than we're already doing it here. Too Much Noel says, any thoughts on the FPO cards? Rarely hear anyone talk about them. My problem with the FPO cards is I think that they're ugly. It's like this big ugly FPO, font in the middle of the picture, in the middle of the card. I like them for the history aspect, but I don't like them particularly for like a display or for the look. It makes the card look worse. Like the regular non-holo version is better looking than having that. So it's tough. It's like I would prefer cards that have that type of unique sort of history in terms of the way the cards were produced, but is also like a really good looking or really beautiful card. I think that those are the two forces, right? One, on the one hand, rarity, history, on the other hand, attractiveness and collectability around that. Patmeister says, what is FPO? The 4 position only cards, if you've seen them before. Basic Trainer says, if you really wanted to use the money to buy a house, would you sell your 100,000 worth WotC sealed boxes or cash out of all your 100,000 from your 401k? God. I would not cash out of my 100,000 for my 401k. Neo21803 says, what's the best way to store raw unopened booster packs for long-term investment? So I have them in like a one of those like little like team bags with a card saver in the back to kind of act, and I just kind of saw people doing it, and I just always kept doing them that way. I haven't had any issues with them. I don't have a huge, I think I probably have like 20 packs, maybe even less. Actually, I think I have less. I think that's an exaggeration. I think I probably have like 12 like old WotC packs, 12 to 15 old WotC packs. And then I have a few blisters from other collectibles, and I have some sealed boxes from various things, and mostly other collectibles. And what else do I have sealed? I have, I guess that's pretty much everything. Yeah, most of my sealed stuff at this point is now Dragon Ball Z. Steven Kassoon says, would you buy Scream / Munch promos at $125 each in mint condition? That's up to you. You have to see how mint. You have to take a look at the card. Do you think it's going to grade a 10? I know that they're going for quite a bit of money, so I think if you think it's a 10, probably worth it at that price. Depends on your investing or collecting goals. So a lot of these things are a math problem. It's you kind of almost educating yourself by going on to eBay. You have to look up the sold listings. You have to do the work of figuring out, okay, how much is it going to cost to grade? What are the odds of this getting a 10 or a 9? Making sure I'm asking for close-up pictures if it's a sealed card so I can really see the edges to really know what's going on there. All that type of thing. And then there's always risk, because there always could be damage that's hard to see in the pictures. And then are you going to return it, and then taking the time to do the return and get your money back, and you could have put that money somewhere else. So many factors. It's all a huge part of why I think that this is not for everyone, and flipping cards in particular I think is not for everyone. Jody Matoma says a 2 legend cards PSA slab would be amazing. However, now that I think of it, the 2 cards would need a space between them. Otherwise, they risk being damaged against one another. Yeah, that would be cool. If they did something special like that, be interesting. White Tiger says first edition fossil box, buy, hold, or sell. Oh, I don't know. I don't know, guys, about something like that. I think that there's a case to sell. I think that there's a certainly a case to hold. I wouldn't buy something like that. I think you have much better options for that type of money. I'm again go back to some of the cards that I talk about buying. You don't have to buy them, and I don't want to keep like shilling the cards like that I like. Buy what you like. Buy what you think is going to do well. But I'm putting my buying what I think is worth buying. So when you look at my collection and I show my collection, you can get a sense of where I think the value is, and I can talk about when I'm buying and why I'm buying when. Do I think if you buy that $16,000 box, it's going to go back to zero? No. Do I think if you buy that $16,000 box, it's going to go back to $5,000? Unlikely. Unlikely. Do I think some of the PSA cards, like some of the modern stuff and other sorts of things in the modern boxes, have more of a chance of retracing that much? Absolutely, I do. So, particularly in the long run. So, I think that although these box prices, I think, shot up and were pushed really high, and the fossil box is probably the second most common first edition box behind Team Rocket. It's it's original 151 Wizards of the Coast. It's a historical item. It's a time capsule. People are always going to want it, always going to want to open it and experience opening for themselves. And it easily could just go up in value over time. Now, there are a lot of them, and I think people really underestimate how many of these boxes are left and then how many sealed packs are left. So that's you just have to weigh all of those things. I don't own one. I'm not buying one right now. If I felt like it was a great value, I'd buy it. So I think I can take $16,000 and put it in stuff I'm either going to like a lot more for my collection and or get more of a return on, depending on what I'm trying to do. Padmeister says, a lot of these middle era cards are equal to or more than the expensive WotC and modern cards, and the demand isn't nearly as high, so there's already incentive to sell. Yeah, there have definitely been purchases that are way too high from the middle eras. Ngravy says you should have the question submitted elsewhere, maybe a Discord channel, and let the video chat be here purely to discuss the active topic. Yeah, that's an option. Definitely an option. We're just going to have to see how we all feel, right, over time. There really isn't a way. I love the live because, one, you guys get to hear exactly what I think, and I say stupid things. Like I've mumbled a bunch of stuff and I repeat myself, and I don't know. It's all part of it. It's all part of getting an authentic human being rather than like a polished edited video. Some people like it, some people don't. So I do like the live. This is what it would be like if you were sitting in an actual room with me and just hanging out and talking, talking about cards. And I like lives. I love going on other people's lives. So I imagine there are people who love coming on this live for the same reason. And I also think it's really great hanging out in the chat with other people. It's part of why I love going on other people's lives, because I get to see the same people every week and hang out with them in the chat. And sometimes I'm not even listening to what the creator's saying. And I'm not offended at all if you're not listening to me and you're just hanging out with people in the chat. I do that sometimes too. Def Drew is here in the house. How you doing, man? So Def Drew is the designer of our logo. So definitely give him some real props. He's has been so helpful with the channel and has been such a great friend and guy and supporter so far. Thank you so much. He says, Jake, any tips, things to look at for in descriptions when buying from Japan on eBay? Yeah, interesting question. Tips on buying from Japan. Super interesting question. So it depends. So buying from Japan on eBay, I'm not sure I have any specific tips. I think getting connected, if you want to buy from Japan, Yahoo Japan's a really good resource, and I think getting connected to some of the sellers on Instagram is really good. That's what I do a lot, and I've developed some relationships where I bought multiple times from some big Japanese sellers. If you're trying to source specific Japanese cards, particularly some of the really vintage or pre TCG stuff. I'm not sure if I have any like distinct, I don't know if anyone can help out, or there was something you had in mind, Drew, but. Grumpy Rana says, "Hey Jake, love the content. Would love to get your opinion on what actually makes a hobby established. What characteristics would you see, etc. Any predictions on how long it will take Pokemon?" Yeah, so it's the same. All of this is like semantics. So it's the same thing. What's vintage and what's modern? Nobody knows. It's all something that we will define, as a hobby. When we think about established, I think about it as seeing price stability over a certain period of time. And so when a hobby is very established, it's when you have, rather than saying established or not established, it's more established. So when prices are more stable and more items have continued to sell at that exact same price, that price point is very established. And when you have a hobby filled with many cards that have lots and lots of established price points going up over time, or going slightly down, but in some sort of range over a long period of time, that hobby is very established, which means that there are a lot of people who are really engaged and interested in it, and it's very, very unlikely that it's going to implode and that there's going to be no market, okay? Now, when hobbies go up really high and really fast, like ours has in this year, it attracts a lot of people who have no interest in Pokemon and are not going to be here for the long term and are not going to be sticky in the hobby. And so that's going to cause price instability. And so when we're when over the next few years, we're going to see at some point, we don't know where the prices are going to stabilize, but they're going to stabilize at some point. I'm not expecting there to be zero market. So they're not going to stabilize at zero, but prices for a lot of these items are going to stabilize at some different points, and we're going to have some more flat, looking sales, or slightly up or slightly down, these types of things, until the next big piece of news or big release or big sort of bubble or macroeconomic factors like a big depression or a big, or a recession or another huge bull market, where people have more disposable income, this or that. So that when we think about established, it's all about prices. It's all about prices that make something established. And when you're dealing and buying and selling in an established market, it's easier to know what things are worth. The vast majority of people in the market have been here for a while and know what those things are worth. And there's general consensus around what should be valuable and what shouldn't be valuable. And I think that we have a lot because we're so new and we're having so many debates and arguments about what should be valuable and prices are swinging, up and down, it's unestablished or relatively unestablished to what it could be. It's relatively unestablished compared to a number of other hobbies, particularly older, coins, books, firearms, these types of hobbies. Jody Matomo video says, "I have a strong feeling Pokemon's got the OG Holo Venusaur and OG Holo Blastoise are coming in some sort of XY Evolutions 2 type of set. Pokemon knows that these two cards would empty store shelves." That would be interesting. Yeah. It was definitely interesting that they didn't exist in Evolutions, and it did leave the door open. I think you're really smart for them maybe to do that. So, very smart. Yeah, or release them as some sort of promos or something. Who knows? PokeCrib says, "Love listening to these while I sort." I feel you. I love listening to these types of things too while I sort. That's what I do. I throw a stream, some sort of card stream on in the background, and it's pleasant. Max says, suggestion, do more collector chats with hardcore niche collectors from E4, i.e. QW, yeah, Chansey, Quadar, yeah. I respect both those guys a huge amount. So knowledgeable. I learn things from them all the time. I love reading the articles that that Quadar puts out there. I don't have nearly the knowledge that those guys have, just in terms of like very niche things that don't necessarily affect the market. They're not huge overarching things that you really need to know that have broad effects on the market or predicting prices, but they're such history buffs in the hobby and have so much love and respect for the hobby, and I do too. So I just love hearing them speak. Definitely would be interested. I've never reached out to them to bring them on the channel. I'm not sure if this is something that they would be interested in, but I think that that would be cool to have some more E4 guys for sure come on. Some of the most knowledgeable guys in the hobby are certainly on E4. Mason Barry says XY is now vintage. Damn, he feels old. Yeah, I think it's pretty funny too that when XY is considered vintage, but I don't know. I feel there's a little bit of marketing going on by the people holding XY. Some of like Evolution. Evolutions was being printed up until like last year. Okay. Tomster020 says, do you think older, less popular WotC sets will ever achieve the value they deserve, or will modern continue to be the focus? What would it take for older sets to get that limelight? Yeah, so I think E-Series, and I'm looking forward to making my video where I show my E-Series collection. Like, E-Series has the best art, like maybe in the entire hobby, or arguably top tier. The level of detail, the creativity in those cards, and the common and uncommons and rares, like across the entire set, those sets are like gorgeous worlds. Like if you look through those sets and all the different types of backgrounds and places that these Pokemon are in, phenomenal sets in my opinion. And then also have phenomenal like fundamentals in terms of rarity, in terms of age, in terms of being Wizards of the Coast, in terms of having all of the favorite Pokemon from those eras. So the one thing that has always held them back is that they weren't first appearances of Pokemon outside of Mew on an English Holo card. But and that I think holds them back to some extent, and just the fact that the main thing is that people just didn't collect and engage in them, and they just weren't popular at all when people were kids, and they actually were like not liked. So, but I look at them, I can tell you when I found out about them as an adult, they were, those and the Gold Stars were the cards I was most enjoyed collecting. I think I enjoyed collecting those even more than I enjoyed collecting like Gym Challenge, which was my favorite WotC set, in part because I had already seen all those arts, and so there was a lot of enjoyment certainly in collecting my childhood and getting those cards back, but there was so much enjoyment too learning about new amazing looking cards that still had the same Pokemon that I love and that care a lot about and feel such a connection to. So those are cards that I don't really even care if they're ever valuable. I just think that they should deserve a lot more appreciation. Like I'm surprised that people don't gush over them more publicly. And whenever I hear like negatives on them, like people don't like the arts on those, I think like, am I living on the same planet as like these people? I don't like look through Skyridge, endless amounts of just epic arts like across the board, and who cares if any of these things are valuable, right? Just from a pure collector, monetarily. Yeah, I just can't say enough about those. So all right. Def Drew says, just anything I should look out for in the descriptions, going back to his Japanese questions. Do they use different terms for played near mint cards? Yeah, they can use terms like beauty goods. Like, they definitely can use their own terms. Generally, when they say things like beauty goods or beautiful cards, it means that they're in really, really good condition. Now, some of them have been selling to Westerners and use the Western terminology of like mint, near mint, and some have in detail explain what each of their categories mean. Particularly some of the biggest sellers do that. But ultimately, you have to look at the pictures. But yeah, but you honestly you can find really nice looking cards from Japan that just say like things like beauty goods. These are beauty goods or beautiful. They like that beautiful word. It seems from my experience. Amjad Al-Baghdadi says, what other card games do you see might have value in the future, like Dragon Ball Super, Digimon, or Flesh and Blood? Yeah, I think Dragon, like things related to Dragon Ball. I think it's a great IP. I think I'm a little biased because I like Dragon Ball Z so much. I think Harry Potter is a great IP. I also love Harry Potter, but I think I am a little more unbiased, and I just know how crazy Harry Potter fans are. Of course, Dragon Ball Z fans are obsessed with it as well. Um, Marvel, these types of universes. I think pop culture collectibles can come out of this. I think that they can try new modern card games of Lord of the Rings. As they start to do like new modern, with Wizards of the Coast, maybe doing like a magic Lord of the Rings set. Maybe will that make these old things like Middle Earth or the LOTR? Will that make those more valuable? We'll have to see. Generally, I would collect what you love in that sort of stuff, and I think value often takes care of itself if you're collecting like things from other categories that are really beautiful cards and from huge IPs. I would ignore people who tell you only Pokemon can be valuable and no other collectibles can be valuable. I think that's it's not accurate, and it's not how people really feel. I think and I think often it can come from, not all the time, but sometimes it can come from people who just want you to keep. They own all Pokemon cards, and they're afraid that if you start collecting other things, you won't have as much money to buy their cards. Like that type of vibe that I get. So, and I am never gonna do that. As you guys know, even though I own vast majority of Pokemon, I'm never gonna say don't collect other things that you love and do just because it might reduce the value of my cards. That type of stuff. Okay. DNA Level C says, hi Jake, love your channel. Do you think I'll get upcharged on a PSA submission with a declared value of $500 for a world's top 16 to 32? No idea. I don't know what they're doing. I would say it's highly unlikely that you'll get upcharged. I think it's unlikely to get upcharged in general, particularly in this environment, just because they're so swamped and busy. But I think that on cards like that, like unless it's like ridiculously over, I just don't think that you have to worry that much about those upcharges. But it is something that can always happen, and you do have to be, I think, prepared for it, and prepared to pay that higher price. Swami said, laugh out loud, hey, make the moves while you can. We will never forget this time period. I just bought a Yu-Gi-Oh collection that is just madness value. Yeah, there's so much fun stuff to collect. All right, I'm going to jump to the bottom and see what else people are saying down here. Kenny says, hey, Jake, what do you think about Japanese Neo cards? They're relatively cheap compared to... So it's a similar answer I always have to this sort of Japanese-English debate. It's the same answer I had above. There are various factors that you need to be aware of and be educated on. These Japanese packs, there are 60 in each box. You got a holo in every single pack. They're a bit easy. They're difficult to grade, but they're a bit easier to grade than the English. They do have definite off-centering issues. Japanese cards can have really bad off-centering issues, but they're not going to have generally the same type of scratching and whitening issues. So, and then putting those types of supply concerns aside, demand, right? How much do people want the Japanese versus the English? We're going to have to see over time how it all sorts out. I don't have that's sort of like those types of things they're great questions, and I wish I knew the answer, but it gets into like, it's just too crystal ball-y, and who knows. I think what you can do is at least have the knowledge that I have about it, and so you at least understand the different important fundamentals that are gonna like push and pull the value, and then you constantly are kind of like looking and assessing like where is value. I was buying lots and lots of Japanese Neo cards when they were very, very inexpensive because I saw the great value there and I felt like they were undervalued. Now I don't necessarily feel like anything is like way overlooked in set cards in general, actually. I don't think any set cards are like way overlooked. I think some are more overlooked than others, but they all have attention. People know about all of them, and they're collectors for everything. Connor B says, Harry Potter has a ton of interesting catalysts at play right now that make it interesting. So glad I have a large collection from over the years of loving Harry Potter. Well, that's awesome that you have a large collection. Yeah, Harry Potter's cool. Eventually, I'll definitely be fun to open up. Maybe we'll open up like a booster box for Harry Potter for fun at some point on the channel if people like that. I also, we are going to do a giveaway on the channel. We've been donated a couple of Shining Fates boxes up there. So I was thinking maybe when we hit like 5,000 subscribers, whenever that is, probably won't be for a while, that we will, crack those open, do kind of a nice video and do a give back to people who have kind of been here all along, and thought that'd be fun. All right. Jody Matama says, nice, I have 2 Harry Potter booster packs, 1 base and 1 Quidditch. Sweet. Yeah, they're really cool looking. See, for me, I love the way that the sealed Harry Potter looks. I really like the designs of the boxes. I think the base set is beautiful with the Hogwarts on it. Just gorgeous box. And with the Wizards of the Coast wrapping, it's a cool piece to put up, I think. Connor B says, yes, rip a Harry Potter booster box. That would be rad. So I think tonight, for those who are interested, Rafi's actually going to do a booster box opening on this channel. I can't 100% promise that he's going to do it because something could come up and it might change. But he's going to be doing actually a Star Wars booster box opening, which would be fun, I think, for people to watch. I think he's going to do it live too. So hopefully you guys will tune in, and I'm going to probably tune in as well while I do some of my actual job, some work for my actual job, but have it going in the background. Because I'm interested to see and interested to learn, and he's going to talk about a little bit of the history of the game and talk about different valuations. And I own 0 Star Wars at all. I think I might own like 2 cards or somewhere that are not expensive at all. So I have no financial stake in it. Just kind of interested always interested in learning. So stay tuned to that. Swami says, ooh, heck yeah, I'll be tuning in. Yeah, I think it'll be cool. And then I don't even know exactly what booster box is opening or what that's going to be. But, and then what else? I'm going to be we've got some cool interviews coming up. I guess I won't spoil them, but they'll be fun. They'll be with some cool people that you guys will certainly recognize and know from the community. And I'm also going to be appearing on some other channels. And so I'll post, once that's 100% confirmed and that sort of thing, I can maybe post that somewhere so you guys can tune in and see those conversations that are going to be happening on other channels. So yeah, so a lot of fun stuff going on. Masonberry says, what time for the opening? I imagine you're asking. I don't know exactly when Rafi's doing it. And hopefully he does do it. Rafi has a bunch of kids and does get super busy, but I believe he's confirmed because he's friends with a lot of these he's in the Facebook Star Wars groups and is good friends with a lot of them. And I think that they've all been patiently and excited to open it together and talk about it. So I think it definitely will happen tonight. But Jonathan B says, too bad, I'll be asleep, but good luck to Rafi. Thank you, John. I'll pass that along. Yeah, it'll be cool if you pull some chase card. I don't even know what the chase cards are. When Rafi makes those videos, I'm watching along with all of you guys learning about these other collectible sets. Masonberry says, okay, I'm doing a Q&A with Pokégal later tonight at 6 p.m., so I was going to try to watch. Oh, cool. Well, I will, if they're happening at the same time, I'm going to have to flip back and forth to support both of you guys. As I'm sure a lot of us will do here as I want to hear that as well. I'm going on Pokégal's channel too, I think, in the next week or so. So that'll be fun. She's been cranking those out. Anyone who hasn't given a like and a subscribe to Pokégal and support, you should do that because she's having all of our community over there, and We all like her, and Swami says, "Wow, that'll be fun too. Pokegal's the best. I think the world of her." Yeah, I know you guys have become good friends. Let's see if there are any more questions. If anyone has sort of a last minute question or two, looks like there are some questions here above that I missed. Aaron Brecken says, when grading with CGC, do they use the sleeves you send in with your cards in the final display case? If so, what sleeve brand is best for this? Oh, so I don't know. It's an interesting question. I'm not sure if they do or if they don't. So unfortunately, I cannot answer that question. I am not. I've never sent into CGC, and I'm not at this point. I'm not sending anything in though at the moment. I'm kind of gathering. I have like this is my. I'm actually sending in a lot of these like DBZ ultra rares, minty DBZ ultra rares for all of you DBZ fans are gonna be drooling at this, including the big guy. And then just a few random Pokemon cards. So this is where I keep all my to be graded cards, and I don't know when I'm gonna send them in with all the increased grading prices, and I might wait a whole year and just be patient. Flexing, Swami. Yeah, dude, I've been going after them. So my feeling is like the mint cards are so undervalued, and so hard to find. So just trying to track down as many mint as possible. I think most of these are probably 9s. And it's like impossible to get 10s. They don't exist. Like I don't think there are any 10 ultra rares in the world of anything. Ken Fisk says, Jake, have you looked into Flesh and Blood, the newer TCG? I have not. I don't really know anything about Flesh and Blood outside of like watching a few Rudy videos on it. It doesn't interest me. I have plenty of trading card games that interest me like far more because I'm a collector fundamentally, and I like the IPs and the characters and collecting stuff from my childhood. So I'm always going after my childhood with this stuff. So for me, it's all, it's always going to come back to those 4 or 5 brands and like a new. If I had completed my collections and all of these things, which is impossible because there's endless amounts of cards, then I might look at something like Flesh and Blood. But because of that, I'm not interested. And there may be money to be made, but again, I'm not a flipper. I'm not a, I definitely, I try to buy. I guess the best way to describe myself is I try to buy things that I think are good investments, and I try to buy things for as cheaply as possible. But I have to love the things I buy. Like, it's not worth it. I'm not interested in making. Unless it's like guaranteed money, which like how many things in life are guaranteed money? It's pretty unusual that there's guaranteed money. Sometimes those opportunities do come and you should take them. But unless it feels like really guaranteed money, I don't buy things that I don't believe in. I don't buy things that I think that I don't feel like are valuable or I don't understand their value just to make money just because other people think they're valuable. In collectibles, in stocks, I do, and in other sorts of areas, I sometimes take that stuff into account. But yeah, it's a good question about Flesh and Blood, and I know people have a lot of strong opinions on it, one way or the other. Jonathan B says, Jake, what do you think is the best way to educate the masses about human psychology? Oh my gosh. I don't know. Who knows what they're talking about. I would say I'm going to be a lifelong learner of my own psychology and other people's psychology, and I would, I think having that attitude is good, and understanding that not only is the field of psychology extremely new and probably makes claims it shouldn't, and is doing its best to be somewhat of a hard science while also having these kind of dealing with or engaging in some ethical moral debate around what mental health should be versus versus just a conversation on like normality and abnormality, sort of more of that like harder science perspective, not just trying to talk about like what is versus what should be. But it's it's a question that I'm interested in and am always interested in is how to talk about these things. Are they worth talking about? I think that I get just personally a lot of enjoyment in trying to understand why people do the things they do, why I do the things they do, and then I also I think I get value from it because I can apply those ideas to either predict the future in investing and or take better care of myself and better care of other people. So let's see. I'm going to take just a couple more questions, and then I'm going to seeing light first edition base packs for 8,000 and first edition base blisters selling for 10,500 or so. Do these prices make sense to you? Blisters underpriced or light packs overpriced? Both, neither. Okay, let me think about it. Light first edition packs for 8,000 and first edition base blisters selling for 10,500 or so. Okay. Gosh, yeah, not my area of expertise. I'm not really dealing a lot in these expensive, that would be like the perfect question to ask James from Z&G Emporium. If James is here, he might be listening and just not engaging, as he often is, because he's working on his million things to do. Yeah, it's seeing that, my initial instinct would be like, I'd rather have the blister than the $8,000 light pack. You have a 1 in 3 chance of a heavy pack theoretically, and then also the blister is a unique item and a hard item to get, and has a more unique collectability and sealed collector identity to it, because you can't get those blister items from opening up a booster box and then making more of them, etc. So there's a finite number of those left, unlike the booster packs where every time you open a box there's technically more booster packs can be sold, that sort of thing. So yeah, so I think I would go for the booster, the blister pack in that situation. Team Trouble says, Jake, do you have any opinions on the studies of psychedelics and their potentially positive impacts on patients who've experienced trauma? I actually just was talking to a couple of other therapists about this. But I'm not going to, I don't know. I don't really want to like talk about these types of things on this channel too much, just because I don't really know what I think and I need to do more research. And I'm interested in all things though. I'm interested in, my lens of being a therapist and just in general is always be learning, always be open to new possibilities, new ways of doing things better, but also be wary of people trying to sell you something or people trying to repackage things that have already been done as new so that they can put their ego on it. And I think that happens a lot in the world, where you see a lot of people just kind of saying the same thing, and a lot of it's very common sense, but they say it in a way, or they attach their own ego to it, that they're the ones who came up with it, and then they get a bunch of following, and all the cult stuff I talk about on this channel and that I hate when people do. So all right, guys, so we are going to end for today. I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I guess just to summarize the final points, we are going to be doing, we are changing the name of the channel from Pokenomics with Jake and Rafi to just Pokenomics, so I'll be doing that today. Thank you again to Drew for helping out with the channel. Thank you to all the Patreon supporters who continue to support all these great questions. Thank you to everyone who's watching, who's engaging in the conversation, and thank you to everyone in the Pokemon hobby who also doesn't watch this, and all the people who helped build the hobby. And I do want to summarize and say again, because I know some of the comments I might have made in the beginning, it's so easy to misconstrue these types of things. I have so much respect for the people who helped build this hobby, and but I think that no one is above criticism, and no one is above um, and no one should be. We shouldn't allow people who have done a lot of positive things to say things that we disagree with. You don't have to feel the need to agree with them. And I have not been in this hobby that long. I have not done nearly as much good for this hobby or helped build this hobby as some of these other people, but I hope to be in the future and hope to be someone who's in this and doing this for a long time. And so I want to hold myself to that same standard, and down the line, if people, if I don't want people to respect me to the point where they don't disagree with me or debate me, or and where people feel the need, like if someone disagrees with me or says that I'm this or I'm that, like they're not yelled at, right? I'd like everyone to be held to the same standard. So I think that's a good place to end this video on. And again, thank you all so much for engaging. Max says, where do we submit Patreon questions? Yeah, so it says on Patreon. So if you're a patron, you just message me those questions, and you private message me on Patreon, and then I get those questions and I compile a list every week, and then I answer those questions live at the beginning of each live stream. So it just allows for a way for you to get your question definitely answered. And a lot of people don't ask questions and are just supporting because they want this type of channel to exist, and they want it to keep existing, and they know that is helping motivate me and paying me back even a little for all of the work and time and energy I've spent to gain the knowledge that I have, and then also the work and time I spend in trying to make content that helps people, and that helps the community in a positive way. All right, so thanks again for tuning in. It's been a pleasure talking with y'all, and I will see everyone live